Hi, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So happy to be tuning in today. Yes, on this, I don't know where everyone's tuning in from, but I'm in Toronto right now. It's a bit gloomy today. So we're going to make this less gloomy. Welcome, everybody. Hi. So thank you all for joining us today. My name is Alex Petkovski, Board of Directors for the Alliance for Women Film Composers and composer-songwriter for the screen. I am so looking forward to today's Inside session, as brought to you by the AWFC and WIFT Toronto, with our esteemed panelists. Thank you all for your time today. Very excited to delve into all things process and creative relationship between these composer-director pairs joining us. I'd like to first start off by doing a little intro of our panelists for anyone who might have missed reading their bios. Today, we are joined by Suad Bushnaq, multi-award-winning composer with one Hollywood Music and Media Award win, one CASMA win, 4 Canadian Screen Award nominations, and 3 Canadian Screen Music Award nominations to date. Her versatile style spans a number of genres, and her music, described as reflective and touching by the BBC, has moved listeners to their core. With more than 50 film and TV credits to date, she scored award-winning features and shorts that screened at festivals like La Biennale de Venezia, Tribeca, Hot Docs, and networks like Netflix, CBC, and Sky TV. Most recently, she scored the highly acclaimed 3-part doc series, Secret World of Sound with David Attenborough, the Netflix miniseries Crash and Eid, Egypt's official submission to the Oscars Flight 404, Iraq's official submission to the Oscars Hanging Gardens, and the highly anticipated French-Canadian series Hotel Beirut. Welcome, Swad.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for being here. All right, up next, we are joined by Canadian producer, director, and writer Ania Jamila. In 2024, Ania's feature-length documentary Simply Johanne hits the festival circuit, as well as her narrative series Hotel Beirut, which she co-wrote, co-directed, and co-produced. The series will have its festival premiere and be broadcast in November 2024. Currently, Ania is co-producing and co-directing a youth doc series of 20 episodes and concentrating on several directorial and production projects, including 2 narrative feature films in development with Telefilm Canada, 1 doc feature film, and several narrative series. Welcome, Ania.
Thank you for having me. Hi, everyone.
Next, we are joined by Steph Copeland, screen composer, producer, and recording artist, best known for genre film scores Outpost, Cascade, Vicious Fun, The Retreat, Laced, The Oak Room. In 2022 and 2023, she took home Canadian Screen Music Awards for Best Score Narrative Feature Film for The Retreat and Outpost, as well as Best Score Television Special for Lethal Love. In 2024, she earned 2 Canadian Screen Award nominations for Original Song Love is a Mystery, performed by Jodie Sweetin, and original score for the feature film Cascade. In 2023, Copeland traveled to Bratislava. I'm going to pronounce this wrong. Bratislava. She traveled to Bratislava to work with the Slavic Radio Symphony Orchestra and conductor Anton Popovic, recording her feature film score for Réveillon, a political family drama on the 1993 separation of Czechoslovakia. Welcome, Steph.
Thank you so much.
Of course. All right. And finally, we're going to come to Chad. With a prolific career producing over 35 feature films, including the critically acclaimed Vicious Fun on Shudder and the award-winning thriller The Oak Room, Chad Archibald has been a force in the Canadian genre film industry. He's also the founder and co-owner of the Canadian production house Black Fawn Films and its distribution arm, Black Fawn Distribution. As a director, Archibald's breakout film Bite shook the festival circuit to its core, earning its infamous reputation after ambulances were rushed to its sold-out world premiere at the Fantasia International Film Festival. The film went on to clinch Fantasia's prestigious Audience Award. Archibald's subsequent works, such as the haunting thriller The Heretics and the atmospheric genre mashup I'll Take Your Dead, have captivated global audiences and secured distribution on platforms including HBO, Crave, and Shout Factory. His latest endeavor, the mind-bending feature It Feeds, starring Ashley Greene, is set for release in 2025. Archibald's creative hand also extends to television, where he's making waves as a writer and director on the Eli Roth-produced series The Haunted Museum for Discovery Plus. Welcome, Chad.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining. Hopefully we have, the people who are kind of going to trickle in to today's chat. And again, we're joined by Steph, Copeland, Chad Archibald, Ania Jamila, and we are joined by Suad Bushnaq. Let's begin by talking a bit about the working relationship between composer and director and what it looks like. This is actually a very unique chance to discuss this process from the perspective of one first-time working together director and composer pair, and another pair who have worked on several projects together. So we're going to get kind of a nice comparison contrast. Before delving into discussion on creative process, I'm curious, how did both directors come to learn about and hire their respective composers? Anya, let's start with you regarding Suad for Hotel Beirut.
Yes, thank you for the presentations. It was COVID. I didn't know what to do with my time. So I discovered this platform called Clubhouse. It was really fun. You would just listen to people talk all day long. And I was part of this group of filmmakers. I think they were mainly in the US. And this woman was talking about how in the music composition for film industry, it was mainly dominated by men, and there were not enough women hired. So it always stuck in my mind. We were working on a series at that time, not Hotel Beirut, another series. And there was this woman who did a master's paper on women composers. And she seemed to know a lot of people in Canada and in the US. So I just reached out to her and I was like, do you know anybody in Canada? And Suad was one of the names that she named. So that was my first encounter with Suad. I reached out to her agent. She was super, super busy. But then I was like, one day I will have one project that I will be proud to send her and to ask her if she wants to work with me. So it was a process that started maybe 2 years before we actually started working together. And that's how I heard of her, listened to her music, fell in love with her music, then started talking about her. And some of our common friends, they knew her as well and just said how amazing she was to work with and as a person. And that's how it all started. So I reached out and she was like, let's try it.
Wow, that's wonderful. I love that. So it was very much kind of word of mouth through the grapevine and through her reputation, which is that's amazing. Yeah, incredible. Thank you. Chad, how did you come to find Steph for It Feeds? Because you guys had worked together maybe before?
Yeah, many, many times.
Yeah.
The first time we actually worked together, it was a project that we had done called Antisocial. And it was, our company was just very, very small. We had done a bunch of very small indie horror films. And we went to a company in Toronto and pitched a slate of films. And they basically said, like, we don't have enough money to do any of these, but we'll give you, like, very little. We'll say $10 to go make a movie. And we were like, okay, well, I mean, okay, we'll go make this movie for $10. So they were surprised, and we went out and we were just excited at the opportunity to kind of work with a budget that we didn't have to pay back to investors, or we weren't responsible. It wasn't our own credit cards or anything like that. So we were excited to kind of do this project. And me and the director, Cody Callahan, we had co-wrote a script called Antisocial. And at that point, we had been doing some music videos and had a good friend in the DP, Jeff Mahar, who had, was just great to work with. And he agreed to come on board and, dive into the trenches with us and make this crazy horror film about, I think, social media, like as if Facebook started turning everyone into zombies. So at that point, his partner, Steph Copeland, was a very, very cool musician, much cooler than us. And she was just performing and doing some really, just making really, really cool music. And Steph, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure at this point you agreed, you said that you could score this or at least come on board, but it was the first movie you've ever scored, right?
First anything I'd ever scored.
Yeah.
First anything, yeah.
So it was all of us kind of diving into this movie. It was the first time Cody directed a feature as well. it was a new endeavor for all of us, and really it was just all of us kind of diving into this film with very little money, and creating something out of passion, and just trying to make the best thing that we can. And all of us, like, the crazy thing about this movie is that one, it did very, very well. It sold all over the world, and the company lost their mind and asked us to do a million more of these low budget movies. But it was it felt like we were all being paid the best rates we had ever been paid. Like, if you just looked at how hard everyone was working, how hard Steph worked on creating the score for this film, Jeff shooting it every day relentlessly. It was a really, really exciting endeavor for all of us, and it really kind of sparked our company. And to this day, Jeff Mahar is still shooting our movies. He shot at Feeds, and Steph has scored almost every movie that we've done since.
Yeah, I think we trauma bonded. Really?
Yeah.
Just kidding.
Now we're stuck.
There was no trauma in it. It was really a bonding experience, though, for sure. Like, it was, we're just making a movie. Like, let's just do this. And that was the spirit of it, I think.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, I think it's it's interesting. It sounds like a very maybe base and simplistic thing almost to say, but this show, biz we call show, this industry, it's very much a human to human oriented landscape. So it really kind of boils down to, I think, connecting dots, and when you meet someone that for whatever reason, the workflow and the energy and the passion, it's all kind of, symbiotic. I think building forward off of those relationships and kind of curating and fostering those working spaces is one of the key elements, I think, when we think about, well, how do filmmakers and composers meet, interact, and maintain. So that's really gratifying, I think, and a really good point to hear overall across the board. Building. I love that. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about creative process. What did the creative process for crafting the score look like from the beginning, specifically between composer and director for both of these projects? So how did the proverbial ball, get rolling when these conversations started? And I don't know, Suad, if you want to take this one.
Yeah, sure. Great question, because, having worked on several projects, that's a very important part of, any project. You need to know the map before you go on the journey, right? And the nice thing about Hotel Beirut is that when Ania contacted me, she had a temp score that gave the emotions that she needs, but it wasn't necessarily the style that she's looking for. And I think that's the perfect type of temp score. Having a temp score helps because you know which scenes need music and why. So she hit the right emotional arcs with using these tracks. But we had a conversation about style, and it was, she had a very clear idea of the style that she wanted. So in terms of guidance, it was very clear pinpoint. Like, this is a Lebanese family. We are in the 80s, late 80s, early 90s. They're moving from Lebanon because of the war to Canada. There are teenagers involved. They lived a little bit in Greece or Cyprus. So the influences we're looking for are Arabic music, Lebanese from the 80s, 90s, pop, late 80s, early 90s pop, but also Greek. So Middle Eastern meets Greek meets pop. That for me is a perfect framework. The other nice thing that she did is that she already knew my style. So she wasn't asking me to imitate someone else. She had listened to my music. She hired me because she listened to my music and she knew what I could do. So after this guidance, she gave me the freedom to do what I want within that framework, and to maybe cross a line here or there sometimes, which for me was like one of the best collaborations I've had to date, because I always say that, I've said it before and I will always say it, there are two elements for me that really make or break a relationship with this director composer relationship, and they are trust and respect. Respect in the sense that you respect each other's art. Like, I remember when I saw the first episode of Hotel Beirut, I was blown away from like the first 2 minutes. I'm like, is this not a Netflix production? What, you're telling me this is local? It's not. It looked way above the level, like, this is a local, but it's local budget. We're not gonna say what that is, but we know what we mean when we say local budget, Canadian budget. It's
Absolutely.
a local network, yet the production value that I saw was way superseded that. So there's that mutual respect. Like, I could tell watching the few first minutes of Hotel Beirut that this lady is going above and beyond. Like, she knows what she's doing. She doesn't cut corners, and from all aspects. And she respects my art enough to hire me, but also trust, which is the director needs to trust that the composer will get the job done. And for me, as someone who's a little maybe on the highly sensitive side, if I feel or sense that the director doesn't trust, like from version 1 or 2, that there's no trust that I'm going to get there, it pulls me back. Like, it makes me not be creative. But when you feel that trust from the director, they're like, you didn't hit the right tone here, but this is what I wanted. I know you're going to get it. It just opens up that whole scope of imagination for you. You don't doubt yourself, and you go ahead. And the result is always magical when you have that sort of understanding between you, that mutual trust and mutual respect. That's a magical recipe to get everything done beautifully and with heart and soul. So yeah, after the creative conversation, she kind of gave me wings. I was like, go, and yeah, whenever she'd have a suggestion, I would do it. And whenever I would have a suggestion, sometimes she would think about it, and if it matched what she had in mind, then we would go with it.
Yeah. No, I think that's wonderful. I think those are two really vital, integral pieces of the puzzle, like trust and communication. And so I think you hit the nail on the head with that. I think Ania, I'm sure, it's a two-way street as well, right? The trust, that you put in Suad, but then also vice versa. And so, I mean, can you speak a little bit too about, when you were in those initial stages of getting the ball rolling, that you felt very much you guys were on the same page from the get-go?
Yes. It was not my first time working with a composer, so I always expect the first proposal to be completely opposite to what I want. It often happens maybe because there are so many possibilities. With Suad, I remember it was right after Christmas, so I had a lot of time off. I usually travel around the world and pick up vinyls everywhere I go. And then during Christmas time, I just put them and I just listen to them. And if something speaks to me, then I know I'm on the right track. And for Hotel Beirut, I listened to this Billy Vaughn vinyl from, I don't know, the 70s maybe. And it just had harpsichord. I don't know, I'm French speaking. Is that how we say it? Harpsichord?
Yeah, harpsichord. Yes.
Harpsichord. Yeah. So it had a lot of this instrument that is super romantic, but very old, but also modern in a way. And that was what I wanted for Hotel Beirut. I was like, I want something that is period, but I want something that is so period that it feels contemporary and that has like a lot of warmth, but also like a sound that we're not hearing very often. And I think those were the first words that I told Suad, and then she completely connected with those. Obviously, she's a master at knowing Middle Eastern music, but I didn't want to go Middle Eastern, traditional Middle Eastern music. And that's also something that spoke to her, because I often say that as people of color, we like to put people in boxes, and Arab countries are like more than 25 countries on 2 continents. We're very different from one another. There's a lot of richness, a lot of influence, a lot of Greek influence in Lebanon. And I was like, I want something that feels almost international and at the same time very local. So it was all these words that for me made sense, but I didn't know if it would make sense for another person listening to me. And somehow Suad picked up on every word that I said and understood what I was talking about. So we were talking the same language, although it was our first time working together. And we would just double down on each other. I would say something, and so I would say, oh, maybe this thing, because this instrument, she's technically great. So she would know exactly what instrument to use to translate what I had in mind. But then she would bring out all the emotional power underneath, whether it's comedy, it's a comedy. We're talking about people who have trauma, but it's a comedy. So that was also very hard. I always said it has to feel comedy, but we have to have an under writing of drama in there. And somehow every single time it was there, I don't know how she does it. I would just like write a poetic sentence and then she would understand what I meant and just blow me away and give way more than I would have imagined.
Yeah.
So I think it's what Suad was talking about. It's like this trust between us that I will give you as much information as I can, and you would just like pick up on clues and take it from there. Suad, what do you think?
Yeah, and the way Ania communicated these was extremely respectful, and like even if she hated a cue, she was very open. When
I
she
never
spoke
hated
about
a cue.
I know you didn't, but like it wasn't like, sorry, that's not it. Like I know that sometimes directors can be busy and they might send you like a one-liner, like sorry, totally off or whatever. And I know, the directors, producers have a million things to deal with. We're not the stars of the show as the composer. So I've dealt with that before. But what's nice about her as a person is that she makes sure every person on her team is valued and feels valued. And I've also heard that from her sound designer and other people who worked with her. Like her reputation is that she values and respects everyone on her team. And that's, the way she communicated those concerns, even if I maybe at the back of my head, maybe I disagreed a little bit, but because of the way she communicated things with showing how she values me and respects me, I would actually take that into consideration and not feel like I've been shut down. And I feel that we sometimes forget how important it is to have that level of respect and kindness in communication. We have a million things going on in our lives, we're living through hard times, all that. It's nice to have that level of communication, which not a lot of people pay attention to. But she made it a point to ensure every communication is super positive and full of gratitude and all that, just like sunshine all over. And it's really helped make the process faster. We were also on a hugely tight deadline, like, 8 episodes in 2.5 months almost. So that also helped. The ball started rolling after that, but it was really the way she communicated that helped make this a beautiful cruise, as opposed to a mountain hike.
I love that. And something that you implemented that then we started talking, communicating like that was on WhatsApp, sometimes using voice and just like feeling the human behind the artist or the creative. I think that helped a lot. We can totally rewrite everything in an email but just having that human connection of just, hey, I really love that. Or can we try to go more like this? And it's just hearing the voice and the accents and the colors. It just reminds you that we are humans working together and not just like robots. So that I think is really important, especially today that we're working remotely, all of us, and we're so comfortable with emails and messages, written messages. Vocal is good.
Yeah, voice notes are a big game changer. I agree.
I think Alexandra.
I think we lost Alex. So maybe Steph and Chad can tell us about their experience.
Yeah, sure. What was the question? That's terrible.
It was about the creative process and how we came to find the sound.
Right.
What was the creative process like between you and Chad? Yeah.
And I think we were going to talk about Chad's latest movie, It Feeds, that is not out yet, but it was the latest project that we worked on together. Chad, do you want to start?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, very well said, both of you. I think, it's so true, like having trust and respect with anyone on a film crew, but there's just so much there's so much importance on score of a film. It really can make or break your movie, and just being able to work with people that excite you and challenge you and bring so much life to a movie it's so important. And Anya, like you said, being able to have a good working relationship and staying positive is so important. I think so many of us, we got into film because we love making movies and we love the excitement of it all. And you only really love doing it when, everyone around you is happy and you're collaborative and, you're working with respect to each other. So when notes do come in and, as you're building something together, it's like, how are you, being constructive with your criticisms and how are you building from there? But just to dive in with It Feeds, it's a horror film that deals with trauma. It's basically, the idea is there's a therapist who has this ability where she can go into someone's mind and kind of walk through their trauma almost as if, she's part of, their worst nightmare, so that she can kind of dig deep and really see, what's behind issues in someone. So we're dealing with a lot of world building, and especially, as you're working on budgets, you're trying to kind of create something huge and magical and like dream worlds when you don't have tons of CGI or effects. And so much of it is, what you have on screen, but also, how you create that atmosphere through music and score. And I think, talking with Steph, like how we kind of started with this movie, I know she always reads the scripts and, kind of starts thinking about so many elements. I think even when we were shooting, she was bringing ideas of instruments and, new devices that she was bringing in and getting excited about. And so much of our process that we've done in the past films is, we've, a lot of times when we're editing our films, I'm usually an editor on our films as well, and I try to cut in scores. And often they're very similar scores that we always use, because there's some times where it's like, I know there needs to be a scare here, and I know this scare music always works. It's some of the best scare music, and I drop it in just to make sure that the edit works with, a jump scare or something, for example. So Steph's heard a lot of those cues over and over in our films, and we've also had this discussion, especially in horror films, where it's like, when you do a scare and when you're building tension, it's like, how do you do it differently every time? And also, I think one of the challenges with, dropping in score and creating like, a temp score for a film is that, you have access to some of the most beautiful, well orchestrated music that's out there. And giving that to a composer and basically being like, okay, we need to do something like this, where they had so many resources, so much time and budget and energy, and, trying to create music that will compare to that, so that, when the studio who doesn't know any better watches the rough cut with the temp score and then watches the final cut with the score that, Steph created, that they're not like, well, this doesn't sound anything like that. It was so much better before when you had, Hans Zimmer and then blah, 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 right? So, I mean, a lot of that, and a lot of the reason why we just use a bunch of this kind of similar stuff is that we're almost creating just the waveform. And I mean, there's ways that me and Steph have learned to communicate. Like, I know that obviously as a filmmaker, it's like we're speaking in different languages often. Mm-hmm. So trying to kind of figure out the best way to kind of bridge that so that she can understand what I'm going for, and I can understand, how her response and how, she's hoping to achieve that, or what she wants to bring to the table or challenge that idea. So often it's like a lot of it's just kind of creating a waveform so that she knows, this is what we want in the scene. We do want, music here, or we want to build tension here, or we want to rise here, or we want to go quiet here. And then going from there, and I think there's so many times in our films where, we have our spotting sessions and we go through a lot of the stuff, and Steph comes back with, ideas that are like, okay, what about not doing a scare here? Or now that I've done some of these scares here, or some of these moments of tensions, it's like, I think we really need a release. And in horror films, it's like, it's obviously you can't just have scare. It's like, it's about bringing people up and then getting quiet and then like lowering the tension so that you can build it again. And, it's almost like this weird roller coaster. as you're traveling through a film, especially a movie like Insidious, which is, or not Insidious, with It Feeds, which is basically, if you watch horror films, it's kind of like The Conjuring. It's meant to be like a film kind of like those, where it's like you do have a lot of scares in it. You do have kind of a little bit of a roller coaster of tension. So I would say so much of what Steph brought back to us was of her own creation and just her own talent of being able to recognize, that you can't have these plateaus and rises, it's like you need to have this flow with it so that, you can bring your viewer through it and be able to control their emotions in the right way. You can't just throw them back and forth like a rag doll. Yeah, Steph. I mean, I'm rambling a little bit about it all. But...
No, not at all. Like, the thing I like about working with you, Chad, is because you do like to put the dynamics into the temp score, and that's such a great map of where things are flowing. And then part of my job is just finding the different soundscapes for those dynamics that, serve the story and the subtext, and then also just managing the dynamics, like managing the intensity and where do we want to, fish people, like toy with people and things like that. But like you doing all that head work ahead of the game is like, I mean, it's just great. I mean, working with temp score is pretty fabulous if you're doing it right, and you guys always give me awesome temp score. So thanks. We had to create, one of the cool things about It Feeds was we were trying to create a world. I don't want to give away the film too much, but for an otherworldly creature and the mind of this otherworldly creature, or I don't know, I want to say entity. And so, yeah, I went around and I found this crazy synthesizer, the Lyra, and bought it so that when we're in this, the sort of space, that we have this really just something completely set apart from the rest of the film, which takes place in the real world. And so some of those choices were like those conversations early on were how do we create this really different dynamics between the real world and this other space, and then the space that the therapist takes her patients. So there's three sort of different places we need to create worlds for, and or do world building, and we did that with the sound as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so much of it as well, it's like there's a lot of the scenes in the movie where you have our lead character kind of exploring this new world, and being able to sit down with Steph and just be like, I don't really know what we're going to do here. I threw something in, it's completely not working at all, but this is the idea. She's walking through this house, she knows that something is upstairs that she's terrified of. The viewer doesn't know what it is, but she knows what it is, so we need to be able to feel that she's leading herself towards these stairs. She's debating going up, but she's terrified too. And it's like you watch it without music, and she's basically just walking to a stairwell, looking up, and subtly trying to hold it together. But leaving that with Steph and having her come back, being like, okay, this is what we've done here. Now feel how this feels out. And it's like just I'm always amazed at how well she does that. I really feel like every aspect of film, there's so many talented people that kind of bring the movie together, and directors get so much credit for these elements when really it's like it's like cast. Like when people always say it's like good actors make good directors, because they focus so much on their character and they bring so much and whatnot. And the same goes with Steph. I feel like she's when you cast a star in a movie, it's like I feel like us working with Steph every time. I'm so honored that she's there. She's like a star for our film. Anytime we pitch our movies, it's like Steph Copeland's doing the score. I mean, she's done so many amazing things since we started working with her, and I feel like her career is exceeding ours, and we're just so lucky to be able to still have her around and still working with us and building these worlds with us. But again, I'm always just amazed at what she brings to the table that is so far beyond me, even as a director. hoping for in some of the scenes that we're building together.
Wonderful. Yeah, that's fabulous to hear. And I really love, like, I mean, across the board, I think we're hitting a lot of key points, which is good because sorry, my apologies. I dropped out of the session and I came back in. My internet booted me off. Anyway, I think the overarching, I think, umbrella or the underscore foundation for all of these things seems to be communication. It is steeped in communication between the composer and the director and the ability to speak freely and obviously within the parameters of respect. But it sounds like that communication is very much intrinsic to a mutual respect for people as people beyond just the craft as well. And I think that's a very finite piece to remember. I think moving forward and engaging in this entertainment industry in general. I want to speak a little bit, and it's whatever, speaking candidly, whatever anyone feels that they want to share as well, because we appreciate anything, but any challenges that might have come up or might have been obstacles to overcome throughout the storytelling process when crafting and creating the score, molding it into and marrying it to picture. So I'd love to kind of touch on that a little bit. And Ania, I don't know if you want to maybe speak to if there were any challenges that did kind of come up and how both, you and Suad dealt with them.
Yes, I think for me, as a director, and I think Chad said it really well, we don't have all the answers. We want to be leaders and give directions, but we don't have all the answers. So when we work with talented people and talented composers like Suad or Steph Copeland, I think we also rely on their advice. I remember for me, one of my fear is to have too much music. Am I drowning the story? Am I pushing the audience to feel in a certain way when I should just let them be? So not adding too much music. And that's a conversation that I would have with Suad, and she would tell me, we want music. We don't want music. I think that was your expression. So it's not like spreading music everywhere. It's just finding that balance. What I feel is important, but what Suad feels as well. And I think the right amount of music is somewhere in the middle of my vision and her vision. So it's people working together. We always say film, series, it takes a village. And it's just listening to what the other one says. And for me, it's the amount of music for sure. In terms of influences, I think we got that nailed. Instruments too. I don't know, Suad, what would you say was our challenges?
Yeah, we had the normal challenges of, for example, a cue being too overly dramatic. You asked me to make it a little softer, or an actor overacting where I didn't have to add more, the normal kind of challenges. But I think one thing I really appreciated with Ania is when it came to the final mix, because it's not always that composers get a say on how loud or softly the music is mixed. And I remember I was with her at the playback of all the episodes, and we had communicated beforehand. Like, for example, in one of the scenes, the music there was the purpose of the score there was to give us the inside feeling of one of our main protagonists. And at the mix, the sound of the car was louder than that music. But that was for me and Ania, once, we had the chat. That was a moment that was supposed to be a larger than life moment where what matters is what's happening inside the head of this character as opposed to the car or the birds or the wind or whatever. So conversations like this, we don't always get to have these conversations with directors. We don't always get the privilege of having them. I've worked on projects where my job was to compose the music, thank you, bye. And then we mix it the way we want. We might chop it up a little bit. I've been there, and you don't always have that right to come and have a say and it is a privilege, more or less. I know some composers say no, it's my right, but I think depending on the production and depending on who's involved, I don't always take it for granted. And in this case, it was a privilege that I was extremely grateful for, because I had a say in which cues really needed to go above the sound design. Like there's without spoiling the series, but there is a scene where also there's a big thing that happens that triggers trauma. And for us, the music was, for us, the scene, what you see on the screen did not tell you this is a traumatic moment, but we needed the audience to feel the trauma that's been triggered inside the character. And the only way to have that was to have the music louder in that section, because that was the missing piece of the puzzle that the music was filling. If you take out the music, you will not feel trauma in the scene because it's a normal scene, just like what Chad said about the woman with the staircase, right? So for me, a challenge I face in projects I've been on is usually the purpose of the score, the contrasts between the loudness of the score and the silence, the quietness of the silence. And it's not always that collaborators understand the importance of that contrast, right? So with Ania, I was happy to kind of have that open conversation with her and decide on which scenes we really needed to have the music shine, where the music was less important of a factor. And we went into the mix with that in mind. And like, this was a challenge for me that was, luckily in this case, I was fortunate that I had a director who was totally on board, but it's a challenge I've faced in other projects where I don't always get my way. And it's kind of, you know, as composers, we're not here to flex our muscles. I'm not here because I want every cue to shine. No, if I want a cue to be louder, it's because I have a philosophy behind why this cue needs to be louder that feeds into the storytelling. So unfortunately, we don't always get the time or space to express that. And in this case, we had it, but that's the main challenge for me in my work as a whole, having that conversation about levels.
And it was a great learning experience for me just to see how Suad analyzes every single part of the scene with her music, because the music, it was not loud the whole way through. There would be evolutions, and that was exactly. It was very beautiful and inspiring to see her explain her position, and then it would make me think. We would have a conversation, and the mixer as well would be part of the conversation, and then we're the three of us in for the same objective of making the scene shine through the emotional intention that was in the script at the beginning. So like you said, so it's yes, composing, but it's like also in the mixing. And another challenge that I had personally is we worked with children, with young children, first experience acting. So with unions, so we don't have a lot of times with them on set. We have not very high budgets. So we're very limited. We're filming 12 pages a day with children, with first-time actors. It's really hard. So sometimes moments are not exactly perfect in terms of acting, or they're perfectly imperfect, but we're missing something. And it was wonderful to be able to tell Suad, here, I keep watching it and it doesn't speak to me. I want to cry. I don't like what I see. I don't know how to fix it. And Suad would be able to come and say, okay, let me do something and let me suggest something and let's see if it works. And then poof, everything would work just because she was able to add the exact notes at the exact moment, even silences in between. And to do that in a comedy, I find is really, really hard when there's a flat and she's able to bring it back where it's supposed to be in terms of rhythm. That was a challenge that she was incredible at fixing when we had those problems.
Amazing. Yeah, I think that's also a really good point in general with composition. When you're scoring a project, sometimes it's also not fixing. I don't want to use the word fixing, but maybe helping along certain moments and scenes where other, aspects fell a little bit short. So I think that's great to highlight as well. And how about Steph and Chad? Were there any challenges that kind of arose on this particular project on It Feeds, or, was it kind of you guys were in the mode
I'll let you
I'm
go
sure.
first.
I'm sure Steph's thinking the same thing. I mean, so many people uh, deal with this. Obviously, it's film, but time was definitely not on our side with this movie. And you know, we've had projects that we've done before where we've had plenty of time. I'll say plenty of time in comparison. Um, but I actually, Swat, I'm glad you brought up the composer being in the mix. Uh, it's something that we've done. We've done movies without Steph being in the mix, but after Steph being in the mix, it's it's like mandatory now for us. To the point that, you know, I think it stressed Steph out at doing this one because she was still scoring the film while we were mixing it, and she was, you know, she was like, well, maybe I'll just miss the mix for a couple days, and we were like, oh no, like just because after doing so many movies with her, there's just so many times, and I'm talking about myself as a director and other directors that projects that I've produced that Steph has scored as well, where you know there'll be a scene that we think is completely fine, and Steph's like, no, 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 we need to lose this, and I need to go home to do it as well, and it seems like a big ordeal, and we're like, I think it's fine, I think it's fine. Then she comes back the next day with it resolved, and you know she brings the stems in, and you know she works her magic, and all of a sudden the scene is 10 times better, and you know we feel silly that we thought it was okay before because you know she's an artist and a musician, and she just knows that so much better than us. You know, I'm not a musician, I'm a filmmaker. I stick to what I feel like I'm good at. I know she's way better at this stuff, and again, it comes down to trust. But in this film, I know, you know, the timeline that we had. Unfortunately, we had to have the film done for a certain date, and Steph was, I think, you know, she was almost against her will. I know she wanted to be there, but just the time that she had trying to finish the score as well as, you know, being in the mix with us, and you know, trying to do that for, I don't know, 10 hours, and then going home and being creative, and then coming back the next day. I think we had 5 days, 4 or 5 days of the mix, and it was, man, she is such a trooper, and just
Yeah.
really, it's a different movie from having her there.
Oh, wonderful. I mean, I ask what was the Steph, how much time was there to create the score? I mean, what was the window of time?
We had 6 weeks, and but that's actually pretty good. But there was it. I actually had an issue at the top of that movie where I had my hard drive busted on my computer, and my computer was at Apple for the first week, and I was just writing on the laptop. I think I wrote the first 20 minutes of score on my laptop, and I didn't really just have all my tools, you know. So out of the gate, I hit a stumbling block, but then computers back in the studio. So I had like a good solid 5 weeks of doing it with everything together. But it was a big score, and it was I think it was about 90 minutes of music in the end, or like 80, 88 or
Yeah.
something like that. It was a good amount. And um but yeah, I think you know, um, it was, yeah, I guess like it's a big score, you know, that's 5 weeks. I mean, maybe better composers can knock it out a little faster, but I was also messing around with this brand new lyra, and I really wanted to get that one world really right. Um, and yeah, I think it was the last 10 minutes that I spent like a week on, the last 10 minutes of the score, because it was just all worlds collided, you know?
Mm.
So just kind of nailing that down. And there was also, the score was about trauma and horror, and trying to find that balance, to be sensitive but still terrifying, I think. And there are also little shining moments of lightness in it as well. So just finding that balance, and then really trying to bring it all into that final act. Yeah,
Mhm.
I just kept working on it, and I probably could have stopped and just gone to the mix, but not happy. So I just kept going, and I really wanted to connect all themes, and I think we really achieved it in the end. And I kind of actually forgot that we had that long mix day, and then I went home and fixed that cue and then went back the next day for another like mix. But I think like just in those 2 days, like we really like I think it really helped. Like, it really brought it out.
Yeah, and it was such an exciting time. I mentioned this to Steph earlier this week as well. But just being in the mix room, we were coloring at the same time, we were mixing at the same time, and Steph was scoring at the same time, and Jeff Mahar, DP, was in the room with us. So Jeff was watching the visuals for the color. I was, just watching the overall film and the mix, and Steph was there for the score. And it's like all of us are sitting there with our notebooks, like filling our notebooks with notes, and then going off and dealing with our own things. I think me and Jeff went into the color session right after, and then did another like 6 hours of color set. Like it was just an insane timeline to try to go through. But the being able to work with people that are so passionate and relentlessly driving towards it's greatness, I guess, in their own elements. I just feel so lucky as a director to be able to do that. There was definitely days where even in the color session where I'm like, I think this might be okay. I think, and Jeff was like, no, it's not okay. We're going in, we're doing, and then pushing harder and harder, and same with Steph. But and then going through it as well, there were, I think there was elements as well, like Steph mentioned. The film has very high stakes. It deals with, some even fantasy elements that are just different than, it really goes through everything from like, mother-daughter relationship to going into the mind of a demon at the end and what that would sound like, and going in caverns with, medieval weapons, and like it really kind of goes across the whole gambit. So the challenge of kind of bringing all that together, and then we also have like comedic elements in it, where there's jokes or like subtle like a character that has our comic relief basically, who just she has these little elements of lightness and innocence throughout the movie that sometimes land, sometimes don't. And Steph being able to find that level of like bringing it from a horror movie into a world where that joke can land and exist and connect with people, but then in an instant being able to kind of get back to where we need to be. Going through the movie before it was scored, and even when I did a temp score, there were so many issues with finding that dance. And I know that's something that Steph worked very, very hard on. And now, our comic relief, I say comic relief character, but she really isn't. She's an awesome little character in the movie, but she, people who watch the movie, they're like, she's one of my favorite parts of it. It just connects so well with people. And I think so much of that is because of what Steph did and that audible dance that she created.
I love that. No, that's fabulous. That's so wonderful to hear. We are, oh my gosh, the time is like, oh my goodness. Everybody here is providing such great golden nuggets, so really appreciate that. We have about 5 to 6 minutes, so I would love to, before opening up the floor to any questions, I'm curious, where can we expect to watch and experience and listen to these fabulous projects? Hotel Beirut, where
Hotel Beirut, yes, it's going to be launched on TFO, which is the Francophone TVO, on the 24th of October, the first episode. And it's going to be at Cinemania Festival in Montreal soon, on the 8th of November. We're doing a projection of the first 3 episodes in a big cinema room. So, yeah.
Wonderful. Sorry, everyone froze on my screen. Can you still hear me? Yes. Okay, good. Very good. Sorry. Wonderful. And how about for It Feeds? When can we expect feeds?
It Feeds is just in sales right now, so nothing to announce, but I would assume Q1 of next year, Q1, Q2 of next year. It'll be out. It will be out in theaters in Canada and the US. That's all I got so far. But if you follow us at blackfontfilms.com or social media, Black Font Films, we keep everyone updated there.
Wonderful. Well, we have about 4 minutes, and I hope my internet does not kaputski me out of here. So, any questions for these fabulous panelists today? Speak now or forever hold your peace. If you want to drop in the chat as well, if you have a question, that's more than fine. And if not, just I don't know if I can open up my screen here to see everybody. Alrighty. Any questions that anyone might have? No, because I can also keep asking my own questions as well. So, which I'm more than happy to do.
Okay, I'm going to hop on because this was so awesome, and I'm so glad I'm here. And I have directed and produced film, but I'm mostly an actor. So hello, Liz Taylor. I'm going to follow everybody here. I grabbed my pen and my notepad. So collabs. I can't watch horror movies, but I love making them. It's like The Exorcist stuck with me for like a decade. It's like I just can't. They scare the shit out of me. But I really want to. I love how the way everybody's supporting each other and how you have found your film family, and you'll continue to keep working with the same people because really in this industry that's a huge part of it, right? You know, people you can rely on and respect and have a great time with and create and have fun while you're making a magic, right? So it's like, oh, I'm feeling like collaborations everywhere. So if I reach out to you, I just wanted to introduce myself because this is a great, great group of panelists, really. So thank you for your time today.
Excuse me, you are named like the actress Elizabeth Taylor, so I don't know if I can like add you to Instagram, you know?
No, I am the actress Liz Taylor. No. So it's at Showbiz Liz Taylor on Instagram. Showbiz Liz Taylor.
Okay.
And I'm actually the first Liz Taylor that comes up on IMDb because the other one was Elizabeth. So
Okay.
if you go on IMDb, you can find me too. But it's Liz Taylor. I'll be the first one that pops up, which is kind of cool because I started acting when I turned 50, not that long ago. But it's a blast. Yay.
Okay, thank you.
Wonderful. Yeah. I think before we hop off in about 2 minutes. Oh, wait, I'm checking yeah, sorry. Dominique says, can I ask a composition specific question to Steph? Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Hi, Steph. You mentioned making every I've been scoring a lot of horror films, and this is something I've been struggling with. You mentioned making every jump scare or scary moment a little bit different and the challenge of that. Can you talk a little bit about how you do that quickly?
Sure. That is actually one of my biggest challenges, making a horror movie, is making them different every time. But I'm going to share a trick. This is like something that took me a little while to learn, but it is a straight up trick. And one of my best, most effective scares is if you're using textures in your sound to create a sense of a pulsing, a slow wave leading up to the scare, like just kind of moving in and out in a rhythmic way. Maybe it's a little random at times, but the viewer is following a sense of pulse. And right halfway through your last pulse, that's where you land your scare. That's gonna really mess people up. That's like my kind of go-to sort of shape of a scare that I can't use it every time, but I save it for the good ones, you know? If you're looking for a trick, oftentimes it has to just be different sounds related to the subtext of your story. Like the scares should be related to what they are associated with. And so your sound palette should probably be married tied to the story that way.
Wonderful. Yeah. Love that. Thanks for that, Steph. Yes, thank you so much, everyone. The time literally just whizzed right on by. Really, really appreciate everyone tuning in, and of course to our fabulous panelists for tuning in and sharing, imparting these words of wisdom with us all. Yes, a round of applause for our panelists. Thank you very much. Really appreciate you all being here today. And for, anyone who is like, I want to rewatch because there were lots of morsels of goodness in this, there will be an internal video link through the AWFC membership that will be available, which will also be available with WIFT as well. So yeah, thank you everyone for your time. And without further ado, I will wish you adieu. Have a wonderful rest of your day.